title, Russell was momentarily speechless.
Bill, this must have been a great win for you. Exactly.
With tears in his eyes, Russell told an ABC reporter it was all about the team.
Boy, this is such a great bunch of guys, you know. I told these guys before the game, I don't care what happens, I wouldn't trade you guys for any guys in the world.
Russell wasn't only a top player. His last seasons with the Celtics, he was also the coach. When he took on the role in 1966, he was the first black head coach in the league. And when some reporters questioned whether he would have problems coaching white players, he brushed it off.
I don't anticipate any problems with the guys, because one thing that we've always had in the Celtics is mutual respect. And we think that's the most necessary ingredient for a winning combination.
But Russell's influence on the court went well beyond winning.
I guess the simplest way to put it would be that Bill Russell changed the way the basketball was played.
Aram Goodzoozian is author of a biography of Russell called King of the Court. He says in the 1950s, basketball was still a pretty earthbound game. Offense was all about moving the ball in a position to get layups.
But Russell changed that by leaping to block shots.
What a block by Russell! What a block by Bill Russell on Chamberlain's dunk shot. Incredible!
Russell was 6'9", astonishingly quick, and a master at psyching out his opponents.
There was Russell blocking the shot by West. They try to avoid Russell, not drive down the middle if they can help it.
He turned the block shot into a weapon. And once he did that, he erased the easy layup from the game.
To adjust, opponents started shooting from further away, leaping in the air and taking jump shots. Because of Russell, the game became more airborne.
In all these ways, Russell's defense creates modern basketball offense.
Russell made an impact off the court, too. As he reshaped the game, he became a vocal advocate for racial justice. He started his career as a black athlete in a mostly white league and criticized other NBA teams for what he believed was an unofficial cap on black players. In the mid-'60s, Russell participated in the March on Washington, worked with the NAACP, and railed against segregated schools in Boston.
This is a guy who went and conducted basketball clinics that were racially integrated in 1964 in Mississippi. This is the same summer as Freedom Summer, when activists are getting murdered and harassed.
Do you think that you will get some white kids to play basketball with Negro kids?
I think so. I don't see why not. My kids play with white kids, and nobody got hurt yet.
And although Russell had close bonds with all his teammates, white and black, that closeness did not extend to the city of Boston. And the problems began the first time he and his wife visited the city.
They land in Boston, and they're in a cab, and they're heading toward the Boston Garden. And the cab driver starts lecturing him about how to act, how to behave, what people expect out of athletes at this time. Very sort of patriarchal and really rooted in a kind of a racial hierarchy at the same time. And Russell immediately resents it, immediately bristles.
Even as his star rose, Russell took note of every insult, whether it was his home in Reading being vandalized when he was away, or a condescending question from a local sports writer.
The 2 p.m. session of Roanoke City Council is hereby called to order, and I will ask our clerk, or our deputy clerk, Ms. Celia Webb, to please call the roll.
Ms. Price. Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
Here.
Vice Mayor Whiteboy.
Here.
Mr. Bestfitch. Mr. Cobb.
Here.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Here.
And Mayor Lee.
Here, and a quorum is present. Ms. Price had a medical appointment this afternoon, and Councilman Bestfitch is ill. So we will move forward, and I'm pleased to recognize Reverend Charles Wilson, the pastor of the Hills Church, who will come and deliver our invocation, and following that, I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Wilson.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to assemble this afternoon. And Lord, as this meeting moves forward, we ask just for clarity, for your assistance, your help. We thank you for all of our servants who serve in every capacity around this city to provide opportunities for the flourishing of all people, from our citizens who live in far corners of this city to those who conduct business and provide opportunities for jobs and fresh water and other things that we all need to flourish. Lord, as we govern, as we lead, as we make decisions, we pray that we honor you and that we love well every person here, all people. I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask you all to remember our neighbors in eastern Kentucky for the things that they're going through. Last I heard, they had found 28 people who had died as a result of the floods. And I used to think that eastern Kentucky was down the road, and it is out there. However, having worked in Southwest Virginia, we bordered each other, and those folks down in that area have been having a difficult time. So remember them in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Pastor Wilson, again, for leading us in an invocation. And welcome, everybody, to this session of Roanoke City Council. We met this morning with our school board, and I thought it was a very fruitful meeting, and now we'll go into the sessions this afternoon. Please note that council meetings will be televised live and replayed on RVTV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and video stream through Facebook Live at facebook.com/RoanokeVA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. The announcements. The Council of the City of Roanoke is seeking applications for the following current vacancies and or upcoming expiration of terms of office. Building and Fire Code Board of Appeals, 2 vacancies. A property management and architect are needed for those positions. The Roanoke Civic Center Commission has 1 vacancy. The Touring Advisory Board has 2 vacancies. And you can access the city's homepage to complete an online application on any of the vacancies that I just mentioned, and it's an easy process. And let me say this, as I do at each opportunity when we talk about announcements and vacancies, we encourage you to come to put in an application to be appointed to one of the boards and commissions. And that application process is very easy. You can either go online and do it, or you can call the clerk's office, and they will help you to walk through that. But we want citizens to step forward to help us serve on these important boards and commissions. And so we need you to do that, and we're putting things on Facebook and on our webpage because we want folks to come forward. So please take advantage of this and call and apply for any of our vacancies that we have. All right. Item number 2 is the presentations and acknowledgements. I'm going to ask Alicia Grove, Chairman of the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates, to join me at the podium. Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
You got any, bring anybody with you?
No.
You don't have to. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anybody. This is a proclamation that we want to give to proclaim the National Night Out, which will be tomorrow night. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch, which is NATW, sponsors a national community building campaign on Tuesday, August the 2nd, 2022, titled National Night Out. Whereas the National Night Out campaign provides an opportunity for neighbors in the city of Roanoke to join over 38 million neighbors across 16,000 communities from all 50 states and U.S. territories and military bases worldwide. Whereas National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes strong police community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer and more caring places to live and work. Whereas neighbors in the city of Roanoke assist the Roanoke Police Department, Roanoke City Sheriff's Office, and Fire and EMS through joint community building efforts and support National Night Out 2022. And whereas it is essential that all neighbors of the city of Roanoke come together with public safety and work together to build a safer, more caring community. Now, therefore, I, Sherman P. Lee Sr., Mayor of the city of Roanoke, do hereby call upon all citizens of the city of Roanoke to join in support of community building and strong neighborhoods, and do hereby proclaim August 2nd, 2022, throughout this great 7-time All-American city as National Night Out. And Alicia, I want to present you with this proclamation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And you're welcome to have a few words.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just encourage everybody to check out the information on the Roanoke City webpage and the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates page that has a list of all of the parties going on tomorrow night. They're all over town in, I think, 17 different neighborhoods. Should be a really great time. The Sheriff's Department will be out, the Fire EMS Department will be out, and the police will be out. And usually there's food and games, and it's a good time to get to know those folks in our neighborhoods. So appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is hearing of citizens upon public matters. And City Council sets this time as a priority for citizens to be heard. All matters are referred to the city manager for response, recommendation, or report to council as he may deem appropriate. And we have one speaker. Okay. Monte, just call them off. That's good.
Darren Johnson.
Darren Johnson. Okay, going once, going twice. That's it. Next speaker.
Jason Roganese. I'm sorry, Rogansey. Jason Rogansey.
Not here.
Barbara Dirk. Yes.
Mayor, before my time starts, I do want to thank you very much for remembering Southwest Virginia and Eastern Kentucky in our prayers today. I was supposed to go to alumni celebration at Pikeville High School in Pikeville this weekend, and just all the hotel rooms and everything are taken up with displaced persons and people trying to help those communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Do I need to state my name? I am Barbara Dirk. I live at 2607 Roslyn. I have my friend Elma with me today. And this was not coordinated. I did not know that Ms. Grubb was going to be here. But who are the people in the neighborhoods? God, please heal our city. Roanoke needs to remember that it takes a village to raise a child. We need to love our neighbors as ourselves. Our neighbors live in our neighborhoods. It's important that the residents in our communities know each other and can help each other and can recognize when there's distress. Neighbors should work together to make their neighborhoods a better place, block by block, street by street, gun by gun, house by house. And a face and a voice are so much more welcoming than a text message or an email or Facebook post. Neighbors in South Roanoke is our neighborhood organization because we prioritize the people more than the place. And we try as an organization to listen to the diverse opinions of people in our neighborhood. Sometimes we don't understand. Sometimes it takes more time to get to a win-win situation, because everyone wants to feel like their voice is heard and they've had buy-in into the presentation. You have the key to the city. You have the opportunity to hire a neighborhood coordinator. We have 49 recognized neighborhoods. We have 26 active on the rolls, and the neighbors need to know each other. We need a president's council to bring the neighborhood leaders together so we can address city concerns. You have the key to the city. If we are top down, then you are the top. You are the top. If we're bottom up, then that's the people in the neighborhood who need to do more and have buy-in to their city than just to pay taxes. So remember, we are neighborhood strong. We are strong neighborhoods. And I do believe I had 3 minutes. Is that right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. All right, that concludes all the citizens that have signed up to speak on in this category of public matters. We do have some speakers that will speak later. All right, we're down to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the members of City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of the items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the consent agenda is approved. Thank you. All right, we now move to items that are recommended for action. Item number 5, there are no public hearings today. Item number 6 is petitions and communications. 6A is a presentation by Frida Cathcart to share information with regards to soil and water conservation and protecting the urban forest. Yep, Frida. And you've been allocated for 10 minutes for this presentation. Let the Vice Mayor join me and approve. She's a good Democrat.
Thank you so much, Mayor Lee, and Vice Mayor White Boyd for sponsoring this presentation. Am I enunciating enough to be understood? Do I need to take the mask off, or?
I can hear you. I don't know about the people.
Mayor Lee, are you able to?
Well, I struggle to hear anyway, but go ahead. How do you feel? If you feel comfortable with the mask, we can hear what you're saying.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. You let me know if you have trouble hearing me.
Thank you, okay.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm here as an elected official representing Roanoke City, the Soil and Water Conservation District Director. And it's an honor to serve in that capacity. And part of our responsibilities is to address flooding. A lot of it has to do with making sure that dams in our region are kept up. But another part of it is things that mitigate flooding. For instance, conserving woodlands. And there have been 2 woodlands recently that have been addressed. Zero Brandon, the potential development there, as well as Evans Springs. So I wanted to remind the city, first of all, I'm curious, how many people lived here in 1985 when it was the flood of 85? Wow, not many. It was a really horrible time. I worked downtown when that happened and drove out of it. And then the flood killed 10 people in the Roanoke Valley, and the damages were estimated at $225 million. The culprit was heavy rain and flooding. And after the historic flooding, the city of Roanoke completed a $72 million flood mitigation project. And that has helped events not be as devastating as that tragic week in 1985.
You see that? That's hard.
Just to show how powerful water can be, I think that picture really illustrates. Okay, now we had a flood also in October of 2018, but that wasn't nearly as devastating as 85. So the flood mitigation was working, as well as the flood in May of 2020. Now, the flood of May 2020 had about the same amount of precipitation that it did in 1985. But the changes that were made were good changes. And this shows the flood level for that May of 2020. Now here is the floodplain map of Zero Brandon. And I wish I had a pointer. Is this a?
It is.
This is a pointer?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay. So here is the potential development at Zero Brandon. See the woodlands? Now notice over here, this is Murray Creek or Murray Run. You can see over on either side there's more potential flooding. And then when it gets to the woodlands, it stops. That's because the woods are doing their jobs. And then on the other side, you can see where it spreads out. Then that's where it's been developed. Now look, these are those little houses along Brandon Avenue. Now notice that even today, they are susceptible to flooding. You take out those woodlands, and that's going to create a lot more flooding. Those are just the trees. And this is one of the things that concerns conservationists and people that care about mitigating floods is just taking down the trees is going to increase the stormwater drainage. Now, in the United Kingdom, they just recently did a study that showed in 15 years, if they plant trees upland, that it can help stop flooding, mitigate things. But that takes 15 years. It just takes hardly any time to cut down a tree. I really like this thing. So this is downstream from Zero Brandon. Oops. Let's see, there's Towers Mall. There's where we were just showing. And then notice how we're getting more potential flooding there, and it's coming down, and it's merging with the Roanoke River coming down here. Now, this is today, the city market, and what is vulnerable to flooding, just like I showed before the previous pictures in 2018 and 2020. There was flooding downtown when that happened, but not like there was in 1985. So if you take out the trees that are protecting that runoff, that's going to put an additional stress and strain on our downtown businesses and residents. All right, now here we are up at Evans Springs. You can see where the exit or entranceway from Valley View is coming down, and the Evans Springs area there. And you can see where it currently has, it's a buffer there that's absorbing the stormwater. Oops. Oops. Okay. All right, so this is further downstream from Evans Springs. And this is today without taking out those woodlands, and you can see how it spreads out here. But not so terrible. There's not many houses. There's like a couple there, like up in here. But even further down from Evans Springs, so we're getting into a few more residences in danger today. Even more further downstream from Evans Springs, we're getting some areas here, businesses. Now look at historic Gainsborough today, where we are, and those houses. You take out those woodlands that's absorbing like a sponge the stormwater drainage, and you're going to create that danger down below. I forgot to mention early, for those of you that don't know, my background is in insurance, and I first started off in claims. So in Texas, they created a buyer's beware program that's independent so that people who are buying there can know what their risk is. The University of Texas and the University of Maryland did a presentation, a PDF, about the growing threat of urban flooding, a national challenge in 2018. I'll send you all the link to it. It's like a 40-page report, a lot of pictures, but it's a really good report in there. And it talks about how urban flooding generally affects the poor at higher levels than it does the prosperous segments of our population. And this can be affecting not just the residences, but the businesses, as well as the travel and the disruptions when the schools are closed. Marginalized communities are more harmed for that. There are federal programs that are available, and I'll send you links to that, having to do with the flood insurance program, and things that are available to help not just people in the floodplain, but also surrounding it. There's also programs available where the city could potentially chip in, do a cost share program with state and federal money that could help buy back some of that land and protect it. Because you have to look at the trade-off of developing someplace like Evan Springs or Zero Brandon and the harm that could potentially happen to our downtown businesses and residences as well as along those streams. So we're all interconnected, and it's important to have a holistic picture when we're looking at things like this. So I hope to be a resource to the council and to the manager, city planners as these things happen, so we can look at this and make sure that everybody is being treated fairly. So I don't know if there's any times for questions or I just need to go or.
Does that conclude your?
Oh, well, I didn't get, I would hate to be remiss in mentioning also the endangered Roanoke log perch, which is a whole nother presentation itself, but that's an endangered species that the Kiwanis Club and other civic organizations like Mothers Out Front and the Sierra Club care about protecting. And those tributaries, like at Zero Brandon and Evan Springs, is where they spawn and things like that. So that's something else to be looking at when you're spending taxpayer money or developers are looking at, to just another thread there that deserves more attention than just like, hey, there's a slide of a pretty fish. But it is an important pretty fish. And it has to do with the whole health of the streams. Like I said, that would be a whole nother presentation, but I really wanted to focus on the dangers to the businesses and residences with the flooding. So are there any questions or? Okay.
No, I don't think we have any right now.
Well, I'm always available too.
Okay.
So I appreciate this opportunity and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item B is a communication from the city treasurer recommending acceptance of the reimbursement as a licensed agency of DMV, which is DMV Select, and a communication from the city manager concurring in the recommendation. There is a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation through the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles to be a licensed agent called a DMV Select Office, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 General Fund and Grant Fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right. Is there any discussion by members of council? All right, seeing none, I'll ask clerk to please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Aye. Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the budget ordinance passes. Thank you. Item number 7 is reports of city officers and comments of the city manager. Our city manager has a briefing, so I'm pleased now to call on our city manager, Mr. Cowell, to introduce the briefing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This will be a very brief briefing, and if I could have Michael Clark, if you wouldn't mind loading. As Michael comes up here, he's going to load a video that our friends at RVTV helped establish, and while he's doing that, I just want to explain kind of what this is and how it relates to what we'll be participating in tomorrow. So as you all are aware, the Parks Department and others have been involved over the last several months in a really unprecedented series of improvements in our parks, which will continue as well. That has included improvements on playgrounds, courts, and others as well, and included playgrounds in Garden City, Washington Park, Raleigh Court, Stanton, West End, and Rivers Edge. And at the end of this, I'll talk about kind of what is next. Tomorrow morning, we'll be acknowledging the work that you'll see in this video at a ribbon cutting at the Garden City Park at 10 a.m. So that will be that's the last of the last of the playgrounds we completed. So we're using that as kind of the ribbon cutting to acknowledge and represent the other playgrounds that were completed as well as we worked through this. And just I want to wait till we get. No, I just got to find the right one, right, Michael? Yeah. And the other option we possibly have too is we could find it on the. Oh, there it is. Is that it? Yep. Thank you, Michael. And again, I want to thank our folks at RVTV that were able to help us with this as well. As mentioned, this investment that you all have authorized is the first of two phases, and really three if we start looking at the recreation centers and those that we'll talk about as well later. It represents really the largest investment that's been made in these parks and recreation facilities in decades. And as mentioned, this included 6 playgrounds as well as a number of basketball courts, tennis courts, and others. The next phase of this, which will include playgrounds at Eastgate, Belmont, Fishburne, and Strauss Parks, will also include improvements at Huff Lane, Fallon Park, Rivers Edge, on the Greenways, Morningside, Wasena, Washington, Fallon, Mill Mountain, Sunrise, at Freedom Plaza, Kennedy Park, and Mountain View. So all of those will be receiving some kind of upgrade or improvement. Those vary from, we've done parking lot improvements to additional playgrounds to courts and those. And of course, you all have been provided a more detailed list of what is represented with each of those as we work through. And again, all of this is really an acknowledgement of what we've known for some time, but really was exhibited very clearly during COVID is how important our outdoor recreation facilities are for the health and well-being of our community. So wanted to highlight that, and again, invite folks that are interested in coming to the ribbon cutting tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Garden City Park. We'll celebrate the completion of this first phase and then get ready for the second phase as well. So I want to thank Michael and his staff for the work that they've overseen that was represented in the video. So that is the briefing. So thank you.
All right. Any questions from members of council? Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Thank you. I noticed during the video that you showed with regards to the playground equipment, they had different themes. How was the process used to put the equipment in the various parks?
I'm going to let Michael answer that piece.
Thank you.
Quite simply, the process we used was the available space within the area that the previous playground was in. So rather than disturb any more space within there, we replaced a similar size playground with what was there to begin with.
And I think an important piece of that also is that some of the improvements that you'll see in this second phase include increasing accessibility to the parks as well, because as Michael said, this was really about taking out old playground equipment and replacing it with new playground equipment. Now we're coming back in some of the parks and actually creating those accessible routes from, say, parking areas to the playground in some of those instances and others, because this project was really playground replacement. It was not wholesale upgrades or improvements of the parks. We're still working our way through those pieces as well.
And mentioning the courts, have you found out or decided when Melrose Park basketball courts will be open, or are they open?
They're not open yet.
Okay.
They were paved last week. That pavement has to cure for about 30 days, and then they're going to apply the coating and all the colors and the basketball lines and install the goals. So we're hopeful by the end of August, hopefully early September, that will be done. The contractor has a goal of having all of our courts done from that initial project by mid-September.
Okay. So will you come back and give an update
Yes,
on that? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Ms. Joan Sanchez.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clark, how many of those parks that were just redone are handicap accessible?
Very few are accessible to the playground. Some have accessible amenities that are there. So, like Bob was saying, in order to make something universally accessible requires a much higher investment in the park space, and this initial investment was to just replace the amenities, and then we go back to replacing some of the access portions around it.
So the next phase, we should be looking for some playgrounds that will be fully handicap accessible with playground equipment as well?
The 4 that we have for this next round will not be fully accessible. We are including in some of the accessible path to it, but we won't have, none of them will be universally accessible, but they will have some accessible amenities associated with them.
Yeah, I think currently we have obviously the park that was donated from the Kiwanis Club.
Kiwanis.
And maybe our Countryside, right? Mm-hmm. Those are our 2 universally accessible parks that we have in our system currently.
And the next closest to that is Smith Park. That one is near 100% accessible.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Michael, while you're here.
Yes, sir.
When, we used to have our basketball league over there, and I always had the question was asked, will we ever get lights over at Melrose Park? Is that, I know they were there a while back. Is that on the agenda?
It's not included in this initial project. The lights that we've typically had on tennis courts and basketball courts were the old halide floodlight style that were put on former power poles, so they were all wooden poles, and over time you start to see those start to bend and sway and such. So as we replace those, we want to put in sports specific lighting like you'd see on a sports field or like we have at Rivers Edge Park. So again, just like the accessibility, that comes with a higher level of investment. And with this initial phase, we just wanted to get the playing surface done first so that it was in good shape, and then we can look at some of those extras coming back on future rounds.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give you a ballpark, we had looked at lighting at Washington Park as a part of that project, the new courts that we have in the upper part. And to light those is in the neighborhood of about $130,000.
All right, Ms. Moon.
He answered it, but I did want to follow up on that. So currently, there aren't any lights over there, and will there be lighting placed over there? Or
we don't have any
no?
plans for it. I'd love to see lighting there.
Okay.
But of course, it just falls in line with all the other deferred maintenance items that we have to address.
Okay. That was my question.
All right,
Yeah, I just have a follow-up to that. Mr. Clark, from my understanding, I thought that had a lot to do with the power company. Do they help determine that those lights in that particular area, or are we totally responsible for the lighting in the park?
So if they're within the park, we're responsible for those. If they're in public right-of-way, then AEP controls those. So
like along the sidewalks?
Yeah, like the dusk to dawn lights you see in neighborhoods and some of the street lights and such that you see along right-of-way, that's all handled by AEP. But any of the sports lighting and typically stuff that's not a dusk to dawn light run by AEP in a park, we control those.
So if we wanted some along the sidewalks, we would need to reach out to AEP to see if...
I believe so. I'm not sure how that works. I'd have to defer to Dwayne or
He's shaking his head,
yeah.
yes. We would have to reach out to them, because I don't think there are any along the sidewalks. That would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was just wondering where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had a follow-up back to
Yes, ma'am.
Washington Park.
Mhm.
At the upper part, over there near the school side, are there lights there?
I believe so. I believe we
Yeah.
have some lights that are over by the
Because there
middle
was
school.
there was a question raised at one time with regards to the lights being turned on or when they went out. And if those that were using the field, that was renting the field under contract, they had to pay for the lighting?
Well, we don't have, I don't think we have athletic field lighting at the football field.
Okay.
We do not have athletic field lighting at the baseball field that's by the middle school.
Right.
If someone is renting any of our athletic fields that have lights, there's a rental fee, and then if you need the lights, there is an extra fee to use the lights.
So the lights
That's part
just
of a
in
rental.
general, just not turned on or?
Correct. Yeah, those are only turned on when there's an event going on.
And when did this take effect?
What's that?
When did this particular fee being imposed? How long has it been?
It was here long before I got here, so.
Really?
Yeah, at least 15 years or so.
Just hadn't heard of it, okay.
Yeah, it's in our fee compendium for the department.
All right. That it? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
That concludes the
That is it,
briefing.
yes, thank you.
All right, we receive and file it. All right, items recommended for action. Item number 1 is the adoption of a resolution in support of the city's smart scale application. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution.
All right. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution supporting 8 applications and authorizing the city manager or his designee to submit 4 applications to the Virginia Department of Transportation for funds from the Smart Scale Program for certain projects, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to take certain actions in connection with such projects.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions or comments from council?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor?
I just would like for the city manager or someone to explain the difference. I got a lot of calls this weekend, people thinking we're voting on the actual project itself. Simply, this is just the application to request the funding. Mr. Kyle, do you or whomever you recommend just explain to our residents primarily, not so much for council, because I think we understand what we're doing, but I don't think our residents and some of the
I can
businesses do.
explain at least the conceptual part of it, and if we need to get into more detail, certainly ask Dwayne to provide those. But so, as you all know, most of our street funding in Roanoke is paid for by our dollars, unlike Roanoke County, Botetourt County, and others, which have mostly VDOT funding. And so one way in which we actually can secure state funding to expand, to do projects in our city is through what's referred to as the Smart Scale Project, which dates back to like 2014 or something to that effect, which is basically the state's competitive program. So we compete with other localities to secure funding to do usually the larger kinds of capital projects that are associated with streets as well. In this case, it makes reference to 8 projects. That's because there are 4 regional projects that are listed in the staff report, as well as 4 local projects. Those projects, as you all know, are two projects on Orange Avenue, the project on Williamson Road, and then also a project with Orange Avenue and Williamson Road intersection improvements. So they're four separate projects, even though they're in kind of the same general corridor or vicinity of the corridor as well. I won't mention the regional projects again; those are in the report. What we, it's a interesting process, is what I'll say, because what you have to, in order to compete for the funds, you have to have at least a concept in front of you. So a concept of what it is that you are seeking the funds for. And so that's been what has been shared with you and with the public in a variety of different ways, including presentations here by the staff and others, including some conversations out in the community by VDOT. And in the case of the Williamson Road, VDOT also conducted kind of a community survey associated with it. And that's because that's what we have to be able to put together to make request for the funding, which is what this is to do, is to seek the funding. If we're approved for the funding, then the next step in that process is to proceed to actual design. Now, the design is based on that concept, so you're not starting from absolute scratch, because you have to demonstrate that the design is implementing the concept that was presented in what was submitted in the application. There will obviously be, through that design process, additional engagement with the community as is necessary. But again, I want to make it clear that that is about the design, the very specific pieces of it. It's not about the concept. You're starting with that. So I don't want anybody to be misled that, we're, use Williamson Road as an example, that we're coming back and saying, okay, well, what does the design look like if we keep 4 lanes, for example? That's not what's being requested. What's being requested is a 3-lane configuration. If funding is approved, then you go into the specific designs. What does that look like? Same with what was presented for Orange Avenue and at the intersection as well. That design then is completed, and of course, ultimately, funding for construction then follows that as well. That's why you've heard mentioned in some of the presentations, some of the articles you might have read on some of the information as well. This is a pretty long tenure. It takes a while to go through this process, because it takes almost a year to actually prepare for and actually secure, hopefully, the funding. Then you're going to spend the time actually to do, once you get the funding, which often is years away, because VDOT fits this within their funding program. They've got projects funded for years. Once the funding comes in, then it'll take quite some time to go through the design process as well, and then, of course, construction. So the other thing I want to make sure people understand is, if folks are expecting any of these improvements to happen next year, that's not going to be the case. Whether that's good or bad, that's not going to be the case. So that's kind of the process that is involved in it. Absent securing the smart scale funding, projects like these aren't going to get done. It's just that simple. The city does not have the funding to do projects like these. These are projects that are on the state system, so there is a state interest in this, along with our local interests as well. And certainly in the cases of the regional projects, there is actually a regional interest alongside the local interest and alongside the state interest. That's why those are areas like 581 and 419 and so on. So hopefully that gives just kind of some insight as to kind of how this process is used, or how it works its way through. And it's every 2 years, correct, Wayne? Every 2 years are your opportunities to apply. So the application is literally due at 5 o'clock this afternoon. And then if we don't apply for these funds, at this time, 2 years from now, will be your next chance to apply for funds.
Let me apologize. We have a speaker here to speak on this item, Bill Tanger. Bill, the floor is yours now.
Mayor, we have another speaker that was in here, Valerie Brown from Williamson Road.
Okay.
Area Business Association.
I'll call Valerie up right after Bill finishes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, my name is Bill Tanger, and I don't live in the city, but I have properties in the city. And I want to refer to the manager's last comments about 5 o'clock today, deadline. How much notice did they give you to look at this project and hear some of the comments from the public, from businesses, and from residents? Not much. So I represent a group called the Roanoke Business Group. We have about 30 businesses, and we also represent 20 different residential properties. And I also have been a past member of RABA, the Williamson Road Area Business Association. I was a member for about 15 years. I was responsible for getting the islands in Williamson Road between Angel and Hirschberger and the trees on the islands. Took me 12 years to get that done. So you have to wait till it's due for repaving. I'm a business owner for 37 years. We're in a public relations advertising marketing campaign. So I look at the presentation of this project from that perspective as well. And I think it's very, very, very poorly done. There's virtually no outreach to the community until the community learned of it incidentally or accidentally, and now is very concerned. By the same token, let me say that I'm obviously a real big supporter of Williamson Road. I'd like to see major improvements there. So I want to make sure that they get done right and not get done cockeyed. Some years ago, the city of Roanoke went to one-way streets, and the advice of somebody, bad idea. And it got changed around later on, years later. Good idea. So there's all kinds of possibilities here. Get some options. I'm talking about some options and some alternatives. One option is that the city could do a demonstration project that where they put cones in the road and temporary striping, and you could see how this would work. Right now, the business community thinks it's awful, I mean, other than the Rabbit group. But this has been done, but this is not the only place in the world. This has been done before. And in fact, there was a community, I forget the city now, similar situation where the mayor, here comes, no. The mayor agreed, said, you know, we'll do this demonstration project, and if people don't like it, we won't do it. And that's what happened. So anyway, options.
Go ahead, you got 5 minutes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, and that way, if you do a demonstration project, obviously everybody can experience that, the business owners, the residents, everybody on the planet. Alternatives. This plan calls for going from 4 lanes basically to 3, you might say. It really goes from 4 to 2 with a turn lane in the middle. I'm fine with turn lanes, love them. But there are other alternatives. You could go from instead of going from 4 traffic lanes to 2, you could go from 4 to 3 traffic lanes and still have a turn lane. And some of the business people are concerned about mainly the lane going north from civic center events and that sort of thing. I want to also point out that the city has new zoning setbacks, and if you go by Dollar Tree and look at the setback there, the new sidewalk and so forth, coincidentally, that new setback is approximately the width of a greenway. And out on Plantation Road, how many people have ever been to Plantation Road recently and seen the pathway? Nobody, right? Okay. So I've got some handouts I'm going to hand out to you in a minute that shows the pathway. In fact, can somebody hand them out for me, or should that wait? Bob, right there. Okay. Pathway is a new thing, relatively new. I've seen it in Florida, I've seen it in other places, wherein the sidewalk is widened basically to turn into a wide pathway or a greenway, and the bikes don't have to be in the road. They get off on the pathway. And in the case of Plantation Road, which is likely the same thing in Williamson Road, it's only on one side of the road, because you don't need a bike path on both sides. So, lots of alternatives that have not been looked at, to our knowledge, not been studied, not been had drawings done on them, or any of that sort of thing. I want to say also real briefly, since my time I'm sure is running out, the city has used Brandon Avenue as an example of how this works. It's a bad example. The other example they used was Angel Avenue to Hirschberger. You can imagine, I like that example. I was part of it. So that works. But our suggestion from the Roanoke Business Group was to put the project on hold, to provide better outreach and input, to consider doing the demonstration project, and develop a community consensus before everybody gets further up in arms and disenchanted with the city. Again, I'm a big fan of bikes. I got 4 of them. But I'm also a fan of common sense. Sometimes the road is paved well, and sometimes it's the road to somewhere else. Okay, those are my comments. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you, guys.
No question, Bill.
Thank you for listening.
All right. Let me ask, how many meetings have been held on this?
I'll ask Dwayne to come up and some of these were city, some of these were VDOT. And there's still, I should say, there's still meetings going on. I have some on my calendar scheduled with some of the folks that are in the area as well.
That is correct. So we've had numerous meetings with RABA. We've had one public meeting with the neighborhood group. VDOT has done their outreach by a survey. And as city manager said, we do have more meetings coming up. I've had lots of phone conversations on the topic. That's about it at this point.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Everybody, any questions?
I'm just going to wait till Valerie's after that.
All right. Thank you. All right, Ms. Brown, Valerie. You have 5 minutes also, Valerie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you today. As the Executive Director for the Greater Williamson Road Area Business Association, I am pleased to supply this support to further assist the safety improvement project proposed by VDOT and further supported by Roanoke City Transportation Department for safety improvements along Williamson Road. As a bit of background in addressing this issue, unfortunately, it goes without saying that the pedestrians and vehicles in the Williamson Road area are seriously overrepresented in injury and fatal accidents. As has been documented in the past several weeks through all of our studies, over the past 5 years, that would be 2017 to 2021, there have been an average of 100 vehicular crashes per year, or 500 in 5 years, with several being of severe injury and 1 vehicle fatality. In the same 5-year period, there have been 12 pedestrian crashes, with 5 with visible injuries, 2 with severe injuries, and 5 fatalities. These results indicate that when a pedestrian is involved in an accident, it's more likely to result in a serious or fatal injury. 1 crash, 1 injury, 1 fatality is clearly one too many, and we have had more than 500 in 5 years. The problem is plain and simple. There's no ease of travel for pedestrians, cyclists, wheelchairs, and vehicles. And it's not just the roadway issues that cause these incidents, but the lack of sidewalks as well. I share a recent accident which occurred wherein the pedestrian was using a mobility scooter and was struck while traveling along the edge of Williamson Road. The lack of sidewalks along this section of Williamson Road provided no other traverse way except via the side of the road. The accident occurred through no unsafe driving of the vehicle, but rather because there were no sidewalks and no extra designated space on the road for pedestrian travel. This crash resulted in a pedestrian fatality. Unfortunately, this scenario has played out several times on Williamson Road. Not always a fatality, but always an injury. Simply put, there is no easy thoroughfare for pedestrians, whether on one side of the road or crossing the road. We are many who share the Williamson Road roadway. The area wants to serve its residents, its neighbors, as well as those who travel up and down the road who come to shop. We want to support our businesses, and we want to attract and grow more. To do this, we must take steps to make the greater Williamson Road as safe as we can. What we do know for sure is that what we currently have is not working, so we need to take steps to make it work, make it better, make it safer. So with this, I, as Executive Director, and on behalf of my Board of Directors, lend full support to VDOT and the City Transportation Department and their request for grant funding to go towards safety improvements along Williamson Road. Sidewalks, curbing, and curb ramps will go a long way in helping pedestrians traverse the road, and adding a shared turn lane will help both pedestrian and vehicle traffic. Mr. Mayor, Ms. Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council, I urge you to join with me and with my board in voting for the resolution presented today in support of the Williamson Road Safety Improvement Project. Thank you.
Let me just ask you, well, I'm hearing two things here. The business community that Bill mentioned, and in the business, what are they saying, or what are they requesting, or what do they want us to?
The Greater Williamson Road Area Business Association, we've talked about it several times at our meetings, and they want safety. They want the residents from the neighborhoods to be able to come down to Williamson Road, be able to cross it safely, be able to shop safely. We had a student who is a nursing student do a study on Williamson Road, and one of the things she noted in her report back to us was, you don't see any moms with strollers. You don't see any kids out and about. And she went to some of the homes in the streets behind Williamson Road, and they said, we're afraid of the road. There's too many cars, with 4 lanes to travel across. You can't get across safely, whereas this project, helps the person cross lane by lane by lane safely, and it's all about safety.
Okay. All right, members of council, questions? I can't turn my head, but one more time, and I'm gonna get dizzy. Nothing here?
No, all right. I had a question. It's not really for Valerie, it's just wanted to comment on the concerns that have been expressed with regards to Williamson Road from the neighborhoods, as well as what Mr. Tanger said with regards to businesses. I am a little uncomfortable in going with what is listed here in the city manager's report for what is to take place. And although it's going to take years, but as Bob has said with regards to the concept, and that concept is what is in the report, and if that is what to stay, then I think we still need some more dialogue instead of rushing into this based on just hearing from the city side that they gave the report at the last meeting and then included this in the application. I am just still a little uncomfortable with that at this point, knowing that I know the current, what is there now is not working. However, I think based on what Mr. Tanker has said, even if you used a demonstration to be able to see what would work, I think we need to allow that and to hear, you've got upcoming meetings with, I guess, in the neighborhood, but by then, this has already been sent off at 5 o'clock. And so whatever the other comments may be, they may get would not apply since we are going to be adopting what is in the report. So I just have some concerns.
All right, any other, all right, Ms. Cobb?
Thank you. Did you have?
No, yeah, I'll go after you.
Well, I appreciate the two speakers today, and just kind of as a follow-up to Ms. Moon Reynolds, and Dwayne, I don't know if you can answer this, but sometimes we hear people that just say no. And then sometimes we hear from people who say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? In your outreach, well, I guess it's twofold. In VDOT's survey, I don't know that we've seen the results of that survey. Maybe you have. And in the conversations with community members, can you elaborate on alternative suggestions that you've heard recommended, concerns about, the reduction from 4 to essentially 3? I mean, it's a very different configuration. I drive down Williamson Road quite a bit. I was down there again the other day, and even with where the islands are, you still have 2 lanes of traffic on either side. But to me, the big concerns that have to be addressed there are, what is the amount of traffic that we see? Because originally it was one of the main streets, and it still is considered a main street in and out of Roanoke. So traffic flow, pedestrian crossing, I mean, it's treacherous. And the fact that you don't have a lot of passable sidewalks, I'm trying to understand what the no is from the businesses, what the no is from the citizens, but I don't want to just hear no. I want to hear, because everyone knows this is a problem street. What are some of the solutions? And my frustration is we can keep processing this every 2 years and not come up with a perfect solution. But if we don't do something now to address the safety concerns, which seem to be intensifying, then we're also not doing anything. So I'm trying to give us some momentum to move forward here. I think council is some momentum to move forward and address the safety concerns on Williamson. Do it in a way that engages as many people in the process, understanding that in all likelihood there's not going to be a perfect solution, but there is a solution that can help us reduce the crashes, have safer access to and from across the street, even from business to business along the side. And if I'm in a mobility device, I'm just not going down Williamson Road, period, because it's not safe. So I wonder if you could elaborate on some of what you heard in terms of recommendations or suggestions from citizens and from businesses.
Sure. So let me start with, in 2016, there was a similar proposal. That proposal involved medians and trees and a roundabout. This proposal now does not, and in particular does not, number one, because of the feedback from 2016, but number two, because the problems that we're trying to solve are 2. The first of which is the inordinate amount of vehicle crashes along Williamson as it compares to other similar corridors within the city, such as Brandon. 500 vehicle crashes on Williamson versus 300 on Brandon. Similarly, pedestrian crashes and pedestrian fatalities. 5 fatalities, 12 pedestrian crashes in 5 years on Williamson versus 3 and 1 fatality on Brandon. And those are the reason we keep going back to Brandon is we saw that as a problem. We implemented the 3-lane solution versus 4, and it has been successful. We have data that shows that. Number one, the speeds have been reduced, which is a good thing from a pedestrian standpoint because we know that speed kills when it's a pedestrian. And number two, that we maintained the vehicle travel time through the corridor, and actually on Brandon reduced the time through the corridor. Now on Williamson, the attempt is not to reduce travel time through the corridor. We would like to maintain travel time through the corridor, but it really is about reducing the conflict points between the vehicles and the pedestrians. So this project would include sidewalks throughout the corridor. 95% of the corridor will receive new sidewalks between Angel and Compton. Now there are some areas south where the only thing we will do is intersection improvements in terms of pedestrians. But the main corridor along Williamson between Compton and Angel will, 95% of the sidewalks are not ADA compliant, and we don't have appropriate signals, we don't have appropriate pedestrian accommodations at the signals. So those will all be reconstructed as part of this project. So that's number one. And number two, in terms of vehicles, the traffic volume, the traffic engineers, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I have plenty of folks in terms of VDOT and in terms of internal staff that have looked at this. The vehicles per hour, if you reduce to a single lane, still accommodates double what the current traffic is on Williamson. So the current PM peak traffic volume, if we doubled that, we still could handle it with one lane in each direction. And again, that's the traffic engineers talking. That's the experts on how to make this work. And that's why we've come up with the concept. And I say we, it really is VDOT's consultants who are experts in the field. It's VDOT, lots of VDOT staff, and when I say lots, there have been as many as 20 VDOT staff on calls with the VDOT consultant when we've talked about this project. Now, in terms of alternatives, you asked a good question. What have I heard? I've heard a lot of, I don't want this, it's going to create congestion. But as I just shared with you, we could double the PM peak traffic volume, and you still would not have the gridlock that people claim that we would have. Now, Bill, to his credit, has been the only one that has offered any real solutions, alternatives when it comes to the pedestrians, and that's the shared use path. So could we potentially do that? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something that we could look at. The other thing that came up in the public meeting the other night, which I thought was a really good input, was the street lighting. That's one that we probably need to address. Now, that hasn't been included in the scope of this project, but when we have had numerous accidents on Williamson in a particular area, we have increased the intensity, lighting intensity. We've reached out to AEP because there are AEP fixtures, and they have increased the intensity in those specific areas. But that's something that we will have to address as part of project design. So we have not designed anything. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars as part of this grant proposal that will be spent on design of this project. We have a concept.
So, to another point that Bill made, is there a way, and I think I saw this on Brandon before new paths were created, that there was a demonstration time. So
100%.
Is there a way to do that even like if the concept or the application is approved and it's 2030?
Yes.
Is there a way to test that out earlier in the process to mitigate what challenges there may be before the concept is finalized?
100%. We did it on Brandon. We can easily do it on Williamson.
Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions for you, Dwayne. I just...
Hold on. I'll get Dwayne back. We got him. Go ahead, finish this. You don't have any questions?
I do. Well, it's not a question. I just wanted to say that we're trying to do the design before we even do the application. What I had before me, and we've known about for some time, and we've been briefed on it at least 3 times, is the application. I don't see kicking the can down the road to talk about the concept or the possible design. I think we're talking about an application where there's funding we may or may not even receive. So for me, I would like to see us at least move forward on the application and pray that VDOT grants the application for the funding, and then we can talk about the concept, the design, and engage the community like we talked about doing. I'm 3 blocks from Williamson Road. I walk that area, and it is very dangerous. Something has to be done. I'm not comfortable riding my bike or walking on the sidewalks. There aren't any sidewalks. So I think we're going around and around about the concept and what it should look like, putting the cart before the horse when we haven't even done the application, and the funds have not even been granted. So I think we need to kind of just rethink what we're trying to accomplish on this resolution before we start designing it. That's all, that's my.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez-Jones?
No, I just was going to ask Mr. Jordan if in the new design plan, they were going to take into consideration the drainage, because that's one of the things that from Compton all the way to Angel, it floods. So that's what I want, that's all I wanted to know. And
Excellent question. The answer is no, unfortunately. And the reason is that these are statewide competitive, district competitive and statewide. If we added drainage to this project, it would quadruple the cost of the project.
Yep.
So there was an intentional decision that if we have a competitive cost-benefit ratio project, we cannot include drainage as part of this project. Otherwise, we know it's not going to get funded because it won't score well.
Okay.
Excellent question, though.
Thank you, and thank you for making it clear the other night that this was just an application process.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up.
Sure.
because I just want to be clear before I cast my vote. What is in the report, it is saying safety improvements for the Hirschberger Road to Wells Avenue. These improvements consist of travel lane reallocations, a two-way center left turn lane, the inclusion of bicycle lanes where none currently exist, pedestrian sidewalk and crosswalk improvements, and traffic signal optimizations. The project's goals are to improve access and safety for all modes of travel along the corridor. So am I, to make sure I'm clear, that this is not, you're not applying for this design or concept, only an application for funding?
This is an application for funding based upon what you just read. So the concept is what you just read. So the funding that was developed, the funding estimate that we are applying for is based upon what you just read. So the lane reallocations, the crosswalk, 40 crosswalks, 95% of the corridor gets new sidewalks, signal upgrades, that all has to be put together into an application that we have a cost estimate for.
So it still goes down to 2 lanes, north and south?
So we have to solve the problem, which is the vehicle crashes. At this point, we have a concept that says the best way to do that is with a lane reconfiguration. If the award is made and subsequently we can figure out how to better mitigate crashes for the same amount of funding, that's on the table.
And you will be engaging.
And we will be engaged.
The community.
That's right.
And all of the neighborhood associations, like you said.
And even if it still came down to 2 lanes?
Oh, wait a minute, now, let's go, we got 2. Hold on, go ahead.
Even if it still came down to what you're proposing here,
Yes.
regardless of whatever, without demonstrations, without decreasing the traffic? Because I think in the survey, it mentioned decreasing the traffic signalization in certain streets, that you're going to reduce that, and I guess that
That's
is to
correct.
improve the traffic flow,
Correct.
so you wouldn't be able to have the congestion.
Correct. That's not the only reason we remove signals. They're just not warranted. So we're removing 1/3 of the signals. There are 9 within the project area. We're removing 4 and adding 1 because of the traffic warrants, the turn movements.
Vice Mayor, you got the comment?
No, I think he's made his point very clear that this is just a concept, and that they will be engaging the community for the actual specific design, and I'm sure receptive to the public and the rest of the businesses in order to do that.
To be clear, I do think the challenge is going to be, if we're going to solve the problem of vehicle crashes and pedestrian crashes, it's going to be difficult to think of something other than reducing from 4 to 3 that's going to be a better, more cost-effective solution. Now, that said, that doesn't mean we can't consider it. That doesn't mean we can't talk about it.
But I think that, I mean, it's an important point, because we want to know, we want
Yes.
you all to know what it is that we're in effect making an application for.
Yes.
We don't want it to be misleading, because,
Right.
as Dwayne has said, while we certainly will engage with the residents as we move forward and the businesses as we move forward, and no doubt that will adjust and tweak the design that's coming forward, at the end of the day, this project will be designed by professional engineers that will put their seal on it, that will meet VDOT's requirements. This is not going to be, so a design is not going to be settled on by business owners or by residents. They will inform the design, but we want to make sure that, you could have a scenario where we get the application, if it solves the issue, and even if every business is in opposition of the project, that's not going to necessarily change what the project becomes if it solves the issue that we're trying to deal with. Because again, what we're saying is the street in its current configuration doesn't work. It doesn't work in terms of safety for pedestrians or for vehicles, and we're trying to address that issue. We want to make sure you understand that if we go forward, you may still have these exact same folks in the room saying we oppose what the project is, but if the funding is there and if it solves the issue based on this application, then we're going to proceed forward. The interaction with the neighborhoods is going to be to try to tweak that design. And again, to the point, could it be sidewalks? Could it be some kind of multi-use path? I mean, I will say the multi-use path on Plantation, if you look at the number of driveways on Plantation, is radically different than what you have on Williamson Road. And the right-of-way is not as wide in that section as it is in Williamson Road. So could that work in some locations? Maybe. That's the kind of tweak that could come into play. But I think Dwayne's right. I don't want anybody to leave. I don't want anybody to make a decision on whether we move this forward or not, thinking that this somehow will stay as 4 lanes and we'll go forward, because the likelihood of that is probably pretty slim to be able to meet the obligations that we have. So.
Let me go to Vice Mayor, and then I'll come back.
No, I don't know if my colleagues had the opportunity to check their emails or not. The deputy clerk or the clerk sent emails from Ken McLeod and Patrick Gallorenzo in favor of it for safety reasons. So just in case you didn't see that in your decision making, please be aware of those two.
All right, Ms. Moon.
I think I just forgot my thought, Mayor. Is there any, I know you mentioned that you compared Williamson Road to Brandon, and so what you're saying is there aren't any other boulevards, thoroughfares that are similar in nature to Williamson Road that this could compare to, what you're trying to do as far as safety?
So we have not reduced from 4 lanes to 3 lanes recently, other than Brandon. So that's why the comparison is reasonable. Now, if you look at Williamson out in the county, it's 2 lanes, right? Beyond, and I'm forgetting where it is, but that's, yeah. So that, that's another thought of, yes, it works, and that's the same traffic volume. So, but again, that's not a project that we did, and I can't speak well to that because that's outside the city limits.
But is that something that you all will be looking at, or is that something VDOT would be looking at to bring back?
Both. So if the funding gets awarded, like I said, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that will be allocated to design, and we will completely vet the project from start to finish. Now, we will start with the concept that we had, take input, but again, we may end up on the same path that we're on. But yes, there's lots and lots of hours that will be spent on the design with VDOT's consultants, VDOT staff, getting community input.
All right, any other questions, comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, can I get a brief response?
All right, you got 2 minutes, Bill. Let me see. Okay.
Okay, so I have heard a lot of this stuff about safety concerns mounting. When I first heard them, I went back to Dwayne and the city. I said, well, you've shown a 5-year period, only one. What about a 5-year period from back and back and back, whatever? And that hasn't happened. We're not getting any feedback from the questions we asked. So, inordinate amount of crashes, I don't think there are necessarily an inordinate amount of crashes. That's the first question, the problem I have in accepting this. In addition to that, let me say, I think that we're all here with good intentions, but the plan says it's going to be 4 to 3. That's the concept, and that's what's part of the application. You can't extract that. In addition to just one quick mention, I'll be out of here, the timed lights can be done now. They don't have to wait on this project. Street lights can be done now. They don't have to wait on this project either. A number of things can be done without this project, and they should be done. And that's one of the concerns of the neighborhood people. Lighting, crossings, all these things that, anyway, and let me just add one other thing. I heard from a traffic engineer that this 4 to 3 business is good up to a certain number of traffic count. And the engineer I talked to said, you don't do that. If it gets over 20, I think it was 25,000 or less, or more, that's a bad move. And then what happens is communities go back to 4 lanes. Enough.
All right, thank you, Bill. Any other questions, council? All right, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote, ready to call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
No.
And Mayor Lee.
Well, let me say my vote, there's some good points, but my vote is, I'm just disturbed by the number of crashes and things that we have on there, and we've got to do something on that. And I think Mr. Ardan is right in his statement, so I'm going to vote yes. And the citizens will be involved, and I want to make sure that I don't want people to leave saying they didn't talk to the citizens. We're getting emails, and they're going to be involved once we do that. So I think we need to go ahead and meet that 5 p.m. deadline, and it's important. But pedestrians and safety is critical. It's critical. Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you. All right, item number 2 is the acceptance of the 2021 Continuum of Care grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to support the coordinated assessment system. There is a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution accepting the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Program competition grant funding to the city for the coordinated assessment system and authorizing execution of any required documents on behalf of the city.
All right, any discussion on this item?
I just have a question.
Ms. Moon,
for the City Attorney, thank you. With regards to your report, you stated that the coordinated assessment system, that it will collaborate with all Continuum of Care Fund projects, the emergency shelter and domestic violence programs in the continuum, which consist of service providers, neighboring localities, including the city of Roanoke and the formless homeless individuals, whose role is to develop a long-term strategic plan and manage a year-round planning effort that addresses the identified needs of homeless individuals and households, the availability and opportunities for linkages with mainstream housing and service resources. In addition, and this is the piece here, faith-based organizations will be a part of the collaboration in an effort to leverage funds and provide additional assistance to those in need, as well as there will be a partnership with the Homeless Schools Student Liaison, along with other prevention agencies in the community. My question is, could you possibly elaborate on this partnership with the Homeless Schools Student Liaison, and who or what organization this will be and their role? And lastly, could you identify which faith-based organizations will participate in this collaborative effort?
We're going to see if Matt can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so this is our coordinated entry grant that we have through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So it funds a full-time staff position that coordinates services in the community. So the partnerships with the faith community, we have 12 congregations that we partner with that provide monthly allotments on financial assistance. So we coordinate folks that are requesting rental assistance, essentially, or utility assistance. We screen those individuals for the congregations, and then they provide approval on actually spending the funds. With the Homeless Students Liaison, we partner with the city schools, with Melora Horn, to screen families that have children in the Roanoke City School District. And there's a pot of money that is designated to assist those families, and we coordinate that through our central intake office, which is funded with both this HUD grant and the VHSP grant that's also on the agenda for acceptance.
So the liaison is the Roanoke City Public Schools?
Correct. Homeless Students Liaison.
And you mentioned 12 faith-based.
Yep.
Could you name them, please?
I can get that to you. Yeah,
Okay.
I can't name them right offhand, but yeah, there are churches out in the community that we
Right.
partner
I
with.
just wanted to know what churches you
Sure.
were referencing.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments?
No.
All right. Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote on this matter.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes. There's a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk, read the title paragraph, please.
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Continuum of Care Coordinated Assessment System Grant, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 grant fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, any discussion by members of council? All right, hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Thank you. All right, item number 3 is the acceptance of the 2021 Continuum of Care Planning Grant Award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development and a Council of Community Services cash match to support Continuum of Care. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution accepting the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Planning Grant funding for Continuum of Care, authorizing the City of Roanoke to serve as the fiscal agent for the distribution of such funds, and authorizing execution of any required documents on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions from members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes.
That was the resolution.
That was the resolution.
Resolution, I'm sorry. Now we have a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph?
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Continuum of Care Planning Grant, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 grant fund appropriations, and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Thank you. Item number 4, the acceptance of the Virginia Homeless Solutions Program grant from the Department of Housing and Community Development. There are 2 measures. First is a resolution.
Move the resolution. Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution accepting the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development Virginia Homeless Solutions Program grant funding to the city for continuum of care strategies in homeless services and prevention programs, and authorizing execution of any required documents on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or comments from members of council? Seeing or hearing any, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes. Thank you. All right, I have a budget ordinance.
Move the ordinance. Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the Commonwealth of Virginia Department of Community Development for the Virginia Homeless Solutions Program, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 2023 grant fund appropriations and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
Thank you. Members of council, any discussions or comments? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the budget ordinance passes. Item number 5 is the acceptance of the Virginia Tourism Corporation grant awarded to the Department of Parks and Recreation for the Go Outside Festival. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution. Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution accepting the marketing leverage grant made to the city from the Virginia Tourism Corporation and authorizing execution of any required documentation on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Any discussion or comments by members of council? All right, hearing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes. All right, there's a budget ordinance.
Move the budget ordinance. Second.
Madam Clerk, can you read the title paragraph, please?
An ordinance to appropriate funding from the Virginia Tourism Corporation, amending and reordaining certain sections of the 2022-2023 grant funds appropriations and dispensing with the second reading by title of this ordinance.
All right, are there any discussions by members of council? Comments? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the ordinance, budget ordinance passes. All right, we're down to item number 6, which is the approval of an additional supplement for bilingual pay for inclusion in the pay ordinance and authorization for the city manager to approve participation by eligible employees who meet the program requirements. There's an ordinance.
Move the ordinance. Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance amending the pay plan for officers, employees, council-appointed officers, and constitutional officers of the city, which became effective July 1st, 2022, adopted by City Council by ordinance number 42355-050922, adopted May 9th, 2022, providing for the addition of a bilingual employee pay incentive program for qualifying employees, providing for an effective date, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
All right, are there any discussion by members of council?
I just have a quick question there.
Vice Mayor?
Mr. Cowell, would that be any employee, any department, or is it for specific employees that are bilingual?
Yeah, it's eligible for anyone. However, when you look at it, this currently covers 9 non-English languages plus American Sign Language. So so first you have to be fluent in one of those.
One of those?
There's 3, and those were selected because those are our most spoken non-English languages in the city. Also, there are 3 different categories, so it depends upon where the need is. So it might be oral only, it might be written and verbal. That will determine what the supplement would be. But the employee also has to be, as attested to by their supervisor, has to be engaged in using this language for a significant part of their work activity. So that will really limit the number of folks that are
Okay, I was
actually
just
eligible.
wondering, so,
Yeah,
okay.
probably a really good example of this would be, say, for example, our permit counter in planning development services, where we get a lot of Spanish-speaking, for example, vendors coming in or folks applying for permits. It's likely that 1 or 2 individuals that could demonstrate that proficiency would qualify in that case. That's an example associated with that. All of the proficiencies are determined by a third party, so they actually have to go through and be able to demonstrate that proficiency. It's not something we'll decide. It's something that is actually done every 3 years. They'll be required to certify that they maintain that proficiency.
Oh, okay, so you got a list and they got to meet the criteria and then you got a bunch of boxes to check?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was just a way for us to continue to expand our language access program. And in some ways, by doing this, it'll actually save us money because we won't then have to actually turn to our private vendor
Right.
to secure those translation services or interpretive services. They'll be able to actually deliver those right there in the moment.
Yeah, thank you. I was glad to see that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Sanchez Jones.
Mr. Cowell,
Yes.
thank you for doing this, because this is a big morale booster. People are using their languages all the time, and they don't get compensated. But you, on the other hand, have a service that are compensated, so this is very good. Thank you.
No, this was definitely, Katie and Angie led this charge and worked very closely with the city attorney's office on trying to get the right way to do this. So this was a way to acknowledge the service that's already being
Right.
provided and very much in demand in some parts of our organizations.
And I also like that they will be certified by a third party, so, which is very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 7.
Mayor, we have to vote.
Oh, we haven't
You
voted
all
yet,
have to
have we?
vote.
Okay. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Whiteboy.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb. Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And the ordinance passes. All right. Item number 7 is authorization of an encroachment in cities right-of-way located at 13 Church Avenue Southeast for a canopy to be hung from the building at its north end. There's an ordinance.
Move the ordinance.
All right. Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
An ordinance allowing an encroachment requested by Old School Partners 2 LLC to install a canopy that will be hung from the building located at 13 Church Avenue Southeast, approximately 90 feet long and approximately 4 feet 6 inches in width, and will encroach approximately 3.2 feet from the property into the public right-of-way adjacent to Luck Avenue, upon certain terms and conditions, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
All right, any questions on that or any comments? Members of council? Hearing or seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Whiteboy.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the ordinance passes. Thank you. I'm pleased at this time to recognize the city manager for any comments that he has.
Thank you, Mayor. And the only thing, and it was mentioned earlier, but just to remind everyone again about National Night Out tomorrow evening. Events start anywhere between 4, 5, 6, and kind of run through till about 8 o'clock. As mentioned, I think there are as many as 17 different locations. You can look on our social media as well as the website to be able to identify where those are. And then finally on that item, I want to thank the personnel from our police, fire departments, and other city staff that have been involved in the planning for this, along with their neighborhood representatives, and will obviously be there present in the evening as well. So I want to thank everyone for their work on that, and that really is the only item that I wanted to add as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions on that? All right, item number 8 is reports of committees. A report of the Economic Development Authority recommending issuance of tax-exempt refunding bonds not to exceed $13 million for Virginia Lutheran Homes Incorporated in connection with various improvements to facilities located at 3804 and 3837 Brandon Avenue Southwest. Harold M. Darby, Jr., Counsel to the Economic Development Authority. There is a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution approving solely for the purpose of Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended, and Section 15.2-4906 of the Industrial Development and Revenue Bond Act, Chapter 49, Title 15.2, Code of Virginia of 1950, as amended, the issuance of bonds in an amount up to $13 million by the Economic Development Authority of the City of Roanoke, Virginia, for the purpose of refinancing the costs of various projects that benefited Virginia Lutheran Homes, Inc., a Virginia non-stock corporation, and providing for an effective date.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Darby.
I'm Sam Darby. I'm General Counsel to the Economic Development Authority. And I have with me today Gary Ventola, who is the Chief Financial Officer, and lawyer T.W. Bruno from Richmond, who has come. They are here to answer any questions that you all may have, either about the financing or the technical aspects. But the idea here is for Virginia Lutheran Homes, which operates Brandon Oaks. You may be more familiar with the name. Assisted living and nursing home. And they've done projects in the past with industrial development revenue bonds, but have found an opportunity to reduce some of the interest rate on the bonds that we are refunding. The requirement under the federal rules is that the Economic Development Authority hold a public hearing, which it did. It didn't get any comment. And then it adopted a resolution asking City Council to approve of the financing. And that resolution is before you today. We're glad to answer any questions. I know it's been a long session. You may be wanting to move on to your next progress.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and appreciate the gentleman coming in today with you. Any questions from members of council? Okay, it's best to come later on in the session and things move on. Thank you, Mr. Darby. Madam Clerk, can you please call roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes. Thank you. Thank you all. Item number 9 is unfinished business. Item number 10 is introduction and consideration of ordinances and resolution. 10A, a resolution acknowledging a group of private individuals working through the Harrison Museum of African American Culture to raise funds in connection with a statue of Henrietta Lacks to be donated to the city and placed in Henrietta Lacks Plaza. There is a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution acknowledging that a local group through the Harrison Museum of African American Culture is raising money to hire an artist to sculpt a statue of Roanoke native Henrietta Lacks to be donated to the city upon completion and placed in Henrietta Lacks Plaza.
Well, I'm pleased to recognize the Vice Mayor on this project that she's been working on so diligently and
Thank
so
you.
well.
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to take advantage of this opportunity to just give a little backstory about the project, and I promise, Mayor, it'll take about 3 minutes.
Okay.
So I have some notes written down, because a lot of folks still don't know who Henrietta Lacks is. But Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman whose cancer cells are the source of HeLa cell line, the first immortalized human cell line, and the only one that we are aware of to this day, and is one of the most important cell lines in medical research. An immortalized cell line reproduces indefinitely under specific conditions, and the HeLa cell line continues to be a source of important medical data to this day. She was born August 1st, 1920, right here in Roanoke, Virginia. She died October 4, 1951, in Baltimore, Maryland, at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Lacks was the unwitting source of these cells from a tumor biopsy during treatment for cervical cancer at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland in 1951. These cells were then cultured by George Otto Gay, who created the cell line known as HeLa, which is still used for medical research and was then the practice to just do the culture with no consent. So they were able to culture these cells obtained from lax without her permission or without the family's permission. Consistent with contemporary standards, neither she nor the family were compensated for their extraction or the use. Even though some information about the origins of the Gila immortalized cell was known to researchers after 1970, the Lax family was not made aware of the cell line's existence until 1975. So Henrietta Lax's story is being told all over the world. In fact, the World Health Organization erected a statue of her last October in Bristol, UK. Now, if they can erect one in Bristol, UK, and she was born right here in Roanoke, we thought it would certainly be befitting to erect one here. And finally, we are at a point where we will recognize her and memorialize her with a statue. And this resolution is asking you to concur that once this statue is erected, that it would be allowed to be placed where we renamed a portion of Lee Plaza, Lax Plaza, July of last year, that we would be able to place this statue there in that spot to memorialize her. So it was really a challenge, to get some momentum going because we were asking for a lot of money. But once we talked about it, a group of us talked about it, I actually went to DC and I met with the grandson who is also the executor, and he was very thrilled to hear that we are finally going to raise money to erect this statue. And so we have been working diligently to try to raise money, and it's just a group of private citizens, but we decided to engage the Harrison Museum of African American Culture as the fiscal agent because this would give donors the opportunity to get a tax write-off. So we're using the Harrison as the fiscal agent, and I am pleased to say at this point we have raised about $139,000, and our goal was $160,000. $40,000 would be used for a documentary that would highlight about 5 sites that we say are hidden in plain sight, one being the Henrietta Lax, nobody knows about her, the Berglund Center, Henry Street, Burl Hospital, which was the only African-American hospital, and Dreamland. I don't know if you're familiar with Dreamland, but Dreamland used to be where Washington Park is. And it was where the blacks went to swim. And, if you mention Dreamland, I've lived here for over 30 years. I've never heard of it. So we're going to do a documentary that is going to highlight these 5 sites, and then the other $20,000 would be used for the statue. So with this resolution that is before you today, I'm asking council to confirm that we're in agreement that the city will allow this statue to be placed in the plaza, and a final product would be the gift to the city by the Harrison Museum. And that's what we're going to be acting on today, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion?
Great job.
I just want to commend you for your work on this, Vice Mayor. $139,000 when you start off at zero.
Yes, sir.
Is an awesome charge, and especially in the times we live in now. So
sure,
we want to encourage those who do want to give.
Oh yes.
You still may want to give.
Oh, absolutely.
That you're open for that. They can
Oh, absolutely. And I can't believe that I read all that and didn't say that.
That's an important piece.
That is an important piece. Thank you. Yes, if you have not given, or if you've given and would like to donate again, we are so close to our goal. You can write a check and send it to P.O. Box 21054, Roanoke, Virginia 2408, and just make sure you put Henrietta Lax or Hidden in Plain Sight, any of those in the memo line, so that it would be directed to our project. And I'm pretty confident that we're going to be making some announcements about the sculptor and the artist that will be doing the conceptual drawing. I'm also pleased to announce that Visit Blue Ridge, Virginia has agreed to do the marketing for the unveiling and for the signatures when we sign the contract.
Okay,
So
good,
yeah, so that's good stuff.
And the movie, when is that scheduled?
Well, the movie was done by some other individuals we won't name at this point, but the documentary that we're going to be doing, you're talking about the movie for the LAX or the documentary?
Documentary.
Oh, the documentary will be complete this fall.
Okay.
Yes, and Visit Blue Ridge, Virginia, we've already met with them. They're really excited to be doing the marketing for this project. When we do the unveiling, it is going to draw national attention. She is just world-renowned, and we are thinking it will be sometime next year because we have asked the Foundry to put this project on their list for April of 2023. So we're on the list, so hopefully we'll get it done by the end of next year, and the unveiling.
By the end of next year?
By the end of next year, yes, sir. We had to get most of the money before we felt comfortable getting on the list at the Foundry, because we didn't want to get on their list and then have the funding. But I am confident with the listeners and the residents that are listening to me today that we will get the other $21,000 and we'll be ready to move forward in the spring of next year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity.
Madam Clerk, we ready to vote on it?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye, and the resolution passes. Thank you. Item number 10B is an adoption of a resolution to change the title of the Assistant City Manager for Community Development to Assistant City Manager / Director of Finance for the City of Roanoke. There's a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Madam Clerk, can you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution acknowledging the appointment of Brent Robertson to the position of Assistant City Manager / Director of Finance.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to get a little bit of, normally I don't bring forward to you an item that includes how we assign different departments to different folks. In this case, however, because the Director of Finance role is identified throughout our code as having responsibility for certain things, rather than go in literally to every one of those points and make a change to this title, which in the future may change again as well. This resolution takes care of that across the entire spectrum. So that way, every time there's a reference to Director of Finance, then it will be referencing this particular position, which will allow us to be able to address approvals and those kinds of things that are required. Also, I wanted to acknowledge, though she's not going anywhere, she's still going to be contributing with us as well. I wanted to acknowledge Amelia Merchant's role in this capacity for us as well. You all know this, but Amelia's been with the city for more than 21 years and has been serving as the Director of Finance for the last 5 years. Prior to that, she, of course, was the Director of Management and Budget in it. Most notably, though, Amelia, and I told her when we were talking about this, that I wish that 5 years ago when she was placed in this role, this would have been acknowledged. But Amelia actually served as the first African-American in this role in the city for its entirety as it's gone in. So I certainly wanted to acknowledge her role in this and her contributions. And again, she's not going anywhere. She's still going to contribute, obviously, into the Department of Finance. This is just a change in how that group is arranged as well. So just wanted to give a little bit of clarity why this rather unusual item is in front of you. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob, for sharing that, but I did have a question.
Sure.
With regards to the dual role here for the Assistant City Manager, will include, you didn't include, and I just wondered about the details of the oversight of his departments that's under community development, and the function of the Director of Finance. Will he move, would his physical location stay downstairs on the third floor?
Yeah, he'll stay where he is. There are some of the assignments of his portfolio I've adjusted those to create capacity to be able to take on this responsibility. And of course, again, with Amelia staying in the deputy role, she'll still be front and center in that. You all may or may not know this. I think in our discussions individually I've shared this with you, but procurement's also moving into this group to better align purchasing with finance as well. But yes, so I've made some adjustments in the departments that are actually assigned to Brent again, to give him some capacity associated with this. One of the things you'll see is we're updating the org chart so you can see how all the pieces
I was
fit
going to
together.
ask about
And
the
we'll be
org chart.
forwarding that to you as well. So.
Okay, and also, just for me, when Mr. Robinson retires and his successor is hired, is it your intent that that individual also perform both duties of the assistant city manager as well as being chief
Yeah, that's
a financial officer?
Yeah, that's a great point. Not that Brent's retiring anytime soon,
Right,
nor do
I
I
just
want him to,
wanted to
but
ask the question.
that's one of the reasons to do it this way, because there is the very real possibility that at the point at which Brent were to leave the city for retirement, whatever it may be, that we would not have this same arrangement, because that would be largely dependent upon who would then fill that assistant city manager position. It could be, for example, if Clarence was still here, I might shift, if I were the manager, I might shift that responsibility. This saves us at that point from having to go in and go change all of those points that I mentioned in the code that would have to be revised. At that point, you would just change it through a resolution just like this as to whoever it would be in there. So no, it really will be dependent upon where the organization is at that moment, as well as what the strengths are that replacement may bring into the mix.
But not to hire a separate person to be chief financial officer?
If we did do something differently, you would probably see a shift back to a finance director, much like we've had in the past, that's independent from the assistant city manager. But again, that'll have to be decided at that point, but that certainly does not preclude that option going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Brent, and thank you, Amelia, for your work as budget director. And so we look forward to working with both of you. And I'm hoping you all will be with us for a while. I don't like to talk in terms of who will be here, who may not. I'm hoping you'll be here for a while. All right. All right, there is, we're ready to vote. Ready to vote on that.
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
We lost her for a second. Do we have a quorum?
But you still have,
We got a quorum?
We got a quorum.
still got.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Whiteboy?
Aye.
Mr. Cobb?
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds?
Aye.
Mayor Lee?
Aye, and the resolution passes. All right, item number 11 is motion and miscellaneous business, inquiries or comments by the mayor and or members of city council. Any business, miscellaneous business? Ms. Moon Reynolds.
My last time there. I just have three things that I just wanted to share. One deals with the bipartisan infrastructure law. Back in June, Senator Mark Warner's office sent out some information regarding grant opportunities that could benefit our community as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Attention was called to three grant opportunities to facilitate bridge replacement, rehabilitation, preservation, and protection projects. The planning bridge projects focused on feasibility analysis and revenue forecasting, which was due on July the 25th, which was last Monday. Large bridge projects requesting funding over $1 million is due on August the 9th, which is next Tuesday. And then there's all of the bridge projects requesting funding less than $100 million, which is due on September the 8th. And my question is for the manager, did we or are we considering any of those three grant opportunities?
Yeah, we definitely are considering, we've considered all three of those. One of the challenges, maybe it's a challenge, I don't know, is that for the most part, our bridges are actually in really good condition. The one exception, of course, is the Main Street, well, two exceptions are the Main Street Bridge, which of course we have as a CIP project, and the Low Water Bridge in Wasena Park. The Main Street Bridge is generally not eligible for the program because it's a local road. It's not on the state system. However, we do think that there's an approach that might fund the low water bridges in Wasena. And if you recall, when Senator Warner was here in the community, he was there actually at that bridge. So we'll continue to work with them on that. We actually think there might be some funding. It may not be under one of these three programs. There's actually another program that we're working with them on. But we'll continue to look to see if there are other options. Again, the good news is that most of our bridges are in a condition that are sound and are not necessary to do the project. Unfortunately, the one that we have doesn't qualify for one
And
of
that's
those.
the one I was hoping you was
Yeah,
going
and
to be able to
us
say.
too, because, it's
Yes.
$30 million
Oh, yes.
project. We still think there might be the ability to secure some state funding, and we've been pursuing that to assist us in funding that bridge, but probably not under the infrastructure bill. So.
Not at all. And the other one I wanted to recognize was, and this is, thank you, Bob. This deals with piggybacking on the Vice Mayor's comments about Henrietta Lacks, and that is the historical marker that former Mayor Nelson Harris was instrumental in getting when he submitted a request for the Virginia Department of Historic Resources to commemorate the birthplace of Henrietta Lacks with a historical marker. And this was done June of this year. The request was approved. And similar to the text that the Vice Mayor referred to on the birthplace marker will read as follows. Henrietta Lacks was born Loretta Pleasant on the 1st of August in 1920 in a house at this site, which is referenced at 28th Street on 12th Street Southwest. That is across the street from Jerusalem Baptist Church.
Yeah, Perry Park.
And they call it Perry Park now. Her parents, John and Eliza Pleasant, had moved the family to Norfolk Avenue and on Norfolk and 11th Street by 1923. After her mother's death in 1924, she lived with relatives in Clover, Virginia. She married David Lacks in 1941 and had 5 children. On the 4th of October 1951, she died of cervical cancer in Baltimore, as was stated previously. Tissue was removed for research without her permission, as was typical before such practices were abolished. Lacks' cells, known as the HeLa line, were the first human cells to multiply indefinitely in a laboratory and used by scientists worldwide. Her cells have been contributed to many medical breakthroughs. Lacks is buried in Halifax County. This is going to be on the birthplace marker that will be placed over in Perry Park. And this is the 6th historic marker by Mayor Harris that he's worked on, with 2 more in the pipeline. The first 5 was the Oliver Hill House, which is located on Gilmore, Roanoke Life Saving and First Aid Crew on Luck Avenue, Hunting Life Saving and First Aid Crew, which is located on Memorial Avenue, Burrell Memorial Hospital, and Norval Lee. And that was a boxer, Olympic gold medalist, and civil rights pioneer from Botetourt County, who was arrested in 1948 for sitting in an all-whites only section of a train. Lee took the case to the Virginia Supreme Court, and he won that. And the other 2 has been mentioned that Mayor Harris has mentioned will be the Gainesboro Branch Library and Virginia Western Community College. And as most are aware, Mayor Harris is a former council member and mayor and a native of Roanoke, a student of local history. He has 14 books to his credit. His most recent volume is the 662-page, The Roanoke Valley in the 1940s. And last, I just wanted to ask the city manager if he could provide a detailed briefing at the 9 o'clock meeting, informal session on Tuesday, September the 6th, regarding the car tax rebate that we adopted at the June 18th council meeting. That was where the city will issue a one-time payment equal to 17.5%, being a portion of the surplus from personal property tax on vehicles to all taxpayers for the tax year 2022 who paid such personal property tax, and any penalties or fees thereon by August the 31st, pending confirmation of a minimum of 91% of the net levy being received by August 31, 2022. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, and if the council wishes for that, that update at that meeting on September 6th, I think we should be in a position to provide you. We should know enough by that time as to where are we on that percentage stuff as well. So.
And if not, perhaps if council is amenable, at least by the second meeting, so that the citizens will know, you know, what to expect going forward with that tax rebate. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Before we go to certification of closed meeting, which will be the last thing we'll do today, I want to remind council that there are 2 important dates in August, and I hope you make room for you on your schedule. The annual school convocation is scheduled for August 18th. I'd like for as many of us as can to attend that convocation. And also on August 25th, we have the State of the City's address. And it will be my 6th address in the State of the City. So I hope everybody will be attending that. Tickets are going fast, so try to get up front real quick.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones had a question.
All right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sanchez-Jones, recognized.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. I am happy to announce that our Amtrak train platform has now benches. Thank you, Mr. Cowell, for putting up with me months of advocating for the seating at the platform. Thank you.
More than welcome. I want to thank Clarence for his work on it and Luke Pugh. And because, of course, in order to get benches, as you know, we have to get approval from Norfolk Southern, from Amtrak, and a whole host of others. And so thankful that they're there. So.
Thank you very much.
All right. How many benches are there?
4.
4. Yep.
4.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to check it out. I did. Oh, did you try? Oh, yeah, you try them on. Okay. Very nice benches.
All right. We're now down to the certification of a closed meeting, and I'll ask for a motion on that. Motion and second.
I move with respect to any closed meetings just concluded that each member of City Council in attendance certify to the best of his or her knowledge that 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in any motion by which any closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered by members of council in attendance.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'll ask Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones. Aye. Vice Mayor White Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Cobb.
Aye.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
Aye.
And Mayor Lee.
Aye. And we have certified our closed meeting. All right, we have some names to be placed in nomination. I'll call on Councilman Cobb to read the list.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates, we reappoint Rachel Hale and Jamal Jackson for 3-year terms ending September 30th, 2025. And for the Roanoke Redevelopment and Housing Authority, we reappoint Karen Mikulski-Carney for a 4-year term ending August 31st, 2026, and a residency waiver is required.
All right, thank you. Now, we're going to vote on those, and as we routinely do, if you are in agreement with the names that have just been read, please voice your vote by saying all nominees. And this time I'll ask the clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
All nominees.
Vice Mayor White Boyd.
All nominees.
Mr. Cobb.
All nominees.
Ms. Moon Reynolds.
All nominees.
And Mayor Lee.
All nominees. All right, thank you. All right, if there being no further business set forth to come before the council, this regular session of Roanoke City Council for August the 1st is now adjourned.